The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
It's me, Mario.
Yahoo!
Yahoo!
The curtain.
That should be the end of the episode, but
That's it. What do we play?
we played Mario for the Nintendo 64. We have so many more bits, dude, now. So many more bits. Not only like comedic bits, but bits to work with while playing video games. Many bits.
All the bits.
Yeah.
So we did, and I said that. Did you even? I don't think you did. Did you listen to the little teaser? Like, hey, N64
Oh, yeah, no,
PS1?
not even a
No,
little
of
bit.
course you didn't. No,
Yep.
talent.
I'm the talent.
So yeah, so I primed people, but since this is our first N64 episode, I will prime people again. For a lot of the N64 PS1 era, you were an N64 kid.
Yes, I was right.
I was a PS1 kid. So we will be introducing each other to a lot of these games, right? So
Yes.
and that's fine. Nothing else changes about the format. So Super Mario 64, launch title for the N64, actually came out in Japan and North America the same year, but several months apart. They had to localize the Yahoos and the Yippies. You know.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though it would have been Italian for both parties.
Yeah, that not. Yeah, sure. Okay. So 96, right? Which is funny because we've played a few like Atari port games and a few like arcade port games. So when I was typing that year into the show doc, I was like, wait, really? Like I had to look back at the Wikipedia article. Oh yeah, 1996.
What do you?
96. So 96. What's your experience like? I wasn't intending to go there, but it just took so long for those words to come out. I was like, I can own this.
So this was definitely okay. So this was when my parents would say I had a crippling video game addiction. I thought I had a fun hobby.
Like all 12-year-old children in the suburbs, you were dangerously addicted to this thing that made you a violent psychopath.
Exactly, with all of its bright colors and running around and all that fun stuff. But no, my parents got me a Nintendo 64. I believe it was because, if I remember correctly, they wanted to get me a different system, or I asked for a different system. I forgot which one. And then they're like, "Well, we can't get that one, so just have an N64." So I was like mildly disappointed. But then I started playing, Mario, and I was like, "This is amazing." So this is a game that I personally owned and just played the ever-loving bejesus out of. And it is mostly a solo experience. So I don't think that this is one where we would regularly have Mario parties.
But
But
came later.
where we would have people over and we would all play Mario. There were other games that, we had a better multiplayer experience. This was definitely one where I just shut myself in the room, poured hours into it. And this was also one of the first ones I can strongly remember there being those fan theories, where
Oh yeah, like if you double jump over here and then backflip, then Boo comes out and kills you.
Yeah. And the one that I remember the most was what happened if you got all 100 or however many stars are there? 160?
120, and then there's a secret star that's not on the list somehow. There's some weird thing that makes it not the number you think it is. It's
But
then you could play as Bowser or whatever.
It was actually that you could get Yoshi.
Oh, yes. I remember that fan theory. Yes.
Yeah.
That was right up there with if you stare at this truck in Pokemon long enough, you will unlock Mewtwo or whatever it was.
Exactly. So I just remember being this is a valuable use of my time. And then playing and playing and playing. And somebody being nah, man, I did it. I played it. You get 100 lives. And I was like, but you
have Infinity Continues.
You have Infinity Continues, and you've literally done everything there is to do in the game. Why would you? You're trying to use Disney bucks as a Caesar's Palace, But anyways, that was my nostalgia experience, and I assume that you had none or very little.
So very little, but not none. So I had friends that had N64s, and I played this a little bit at their house, but it's the scope of Mario 64 compared to even Super Mario World, let alone any of the earlier Mario games, is massive, right? They're just
Yes.
a huge gap in scope.
Tremendous amount of game there.
Yes. So, you play it for a few minutes, but you don't really understand how much of right, you're in the cave looking at the shadows on the wall. Like, you have no idea how wide the world is.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you have what we the intergalactic call a very planetary mindset.
Yes, the very same. So I kind of I was like, oh yeah, this game is like really big, and like I've never come close to beating it, but I didn't really understand. Many years later, I had a friend, roommate that had a DS, and they re-released it on the DS with like some upgrades and some weird things, like you could play as Wario, I think, and like just other, I mean, it's basically sprite swap, but basically the same kind of game. And I remember the feeling of what happened. I sat down to play it. I played it for probably about an hour and then never attempted to play it again. Like, I just remember this feeling of being like, I am absolutely and unequivocally done with this. And I don't know if it was frustration. I don't know if I was just bored, but I just remember never then going back to it. And the reason I wanted to play his DS port is I was like, oh, well, this is a game I'm supposed to have played. Right? Like, this is like a legendary game.
It's like the Citizen Kane of,
right. Yeah, I felt like it was a gaming experience I was supposed to have. And I just, for whatever reason, I was like, no, absolutely not. So when we decided we were going to add in the N64 and original PlayStation era, I was like, well, what else are we going to start with? Like, what else could possibly come first?
Yes, I mean, especially because, we started our series with Super Mario World. If we're going to break into a new console generation, it has to be Super Mario 64.
Yes. Can't wait till we get to the Switch.
But that being said, visuals, I hear rumors, nay, legends, that this game had them.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm going to try really hard as we talk about PlayStation era, N64 era games to not crap all over N64 era graphics because nobody loves low poly. Let me rephrase that. No one whose opinion I respect loves low poly.
And if you don't like that, go outside of your house and start screaming at us.
Get us some feedback. Because the hoof hands of Final Fantasy VII just didn't look good then. It certainly didn't age well. That being said, this actually looks pretty okay because the super cartoony style lends itself to the exaggerated corners and points where you don't think there should be corners and points of the Mario universe. So it's like, you knew as a kid, like, this isn't really what he's supposed to look like. Like, his nose shouldn't have all those corners. But you're just like kind of okay with it. Like,
yeah.
It was just, even now, like in hindsight, playing it as an adult who has played much higher fidelity Marios, I was just like, his graphics are actually pretty fine.
Yeah.
Where they started to fall down was in textures. Everything that was solid colors looked great. Mario looks great because he's like 4 colors, right? The piranha plants, most of the enemies, like they're like 4 or 5 colors. They look fine. But like the stone that you walk on, the like wood textures, like snowy ice textures, like those all look like poorly compressed JPEGs, which is probably what they are.
Yeah. No, I could definitely feel you on that one. I do agree that the 3D, the very highly, like you said, colored animated style, I think that does lend itself to put itself on the left side of the uncanny valley, to where it's like your brain doesn't try to make it really like a strong person. It's like, Mickey, if he was like rendered with like, giant circles for hands, you're like, oh, well, it's still,
right.
it's still Mickey.
It's Mickey.
Yeah. I don't know if he's got like magnets in there and that's how he's picking stuff up, but whatever. One of the things that I think they did really well, that I would never have noticed when I was younger, but I notice now, is their use. So like you said, like this game has limited power, right? It can't render all of this, delicious 3D and like continue chugging. So what I noticed was a good use of 2-dimension within 3-dimension. A couple of the examples that I can think of off the top of my head are in the first one, the Babam Wonderland. King
Babam.
Yeah. Anyways,
sex Babam.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. But is in that level there are these giant like cannonballs that come rolling down the hill at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 2-dimensional.
Yes.
Like things like that.
But your brain tells you they're 3-dimensional because the way they're shaded, it's like, oh, that's a sphere. But They're absolutely not.
Yeah, and like they come at you, and when they hit you, it doesn't feel like, oh, I got decked by a piece of paper. And also, too, one of the other ones I thought was a clever use was whenever there's lava, the bubbling of the lava, the bubbles are 2-dimensional.
Yes. Yeah, the little like bloop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So little things like that where they did it, they like really enrich the world, but don't cause the N64 to melt under the strain. I thought it was like, again, and Nintendo is known for this, for being clever with their resources. I thought that was like a very kind of, because, I'm sure that they were looking at this giant lake of lava and they're like, it has to be bubbling. Otherwise it's just red.
It's red water.
Yeah, it's red water. It doesn't look right. And it's like, well, we can't have these like giant bubbles. It's going to screw everything up, It's like, well, what if we just have pictures of bubbles that look like the bubbles? And it's like, oh, no, that'll work. So I thought that was actually a clever use of space and power.
It is. And they, something where that falls down, which like where the limited power kind of bit them is in draw distance. Because in 3D games, that's a thing you have to care about. And there's like the bomb cannons, like you talk to the friendly sex bombs and they open the little thing and then the little cannon comes out. And if you are way on the other side of the map and you look at one of those, it appears open no matter what, because the pit is rendered. The little lid is not being rendered. And it's just like a weird... I'm sure there's a good reason that it's like, okay, we already have the texture stored in memory, so we can draw more stone. But what we don't have stored in memory is the little picture of the bomb, right? So it's just like a quirk of the limited resources. But it was one of those things that, like, once I noticed, every time I saw an open cannon, I was like, did I open the cannon in this course?
Oh, wait, what? Yeah, no, I could definitely see that, and there's definitely and something that we, I think, need to address is that the fact that this is, again, the birth of a new. This is going from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. As a very wise man once said, that ain't easy. It ain't even quantifiable, So that being said, like, it is difficult for me, especially viewing it through nostalgia goggles, to, not like in some areas. There are definitely some areas where I was like, oh, that was the worst. But there are definitely some areas too where I'm like, considering. I mean, I can't help but juxtapose this to Sonic, which we also did because, like, our first episode was Mario, second episode was Sonic. So if we're going to juxtapose it, that should be our next.
Right. Oh, God. Do we want to do that to ourselves?
I mean, no, but we're professionals. We run a good show here. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So you compare it to that, it's just kind of like, well, there are definitely some nuances that were missed, but considering that literally they were adding an entire other dimension, and the next time they do that, we're going to be playing a 4-dimensional game, which I'm down for.
Braid.
Kinda.
A little bit.
But anyways, one of the other things I thought was interesting, an interesting thing that actually I didn't kind of notice when I was younger, but I picked up on now that all other Mario games did once they moved to the 3rd dimension is rendering the shadow of your jump so you know where you're going to land.
Yes.
And that is super necessary.
Crucial.
Yeah, because if you don't have that, you're just kind of guessing.
Yeah. No, and it's so crucial that I caught myself not doing it at first and missing a bunch of jumps. And then when I was like, look at the shot, I was, oh, yeah, yes. And I've played other 3D Marios, which we'll talk about, but but I was just like, how did I even forget this? And it's like, oh, because I've been playing all these 2D games where you don't have a jump shadow because you can see the exact place you're going to land because you're only measuring that X and Y coordinate, right? And the Z axis screws everything up. I did kind of fall into a weird place with some of the graphics though, where like the piranha plant is like not, I don't think it's not right. Like, the balance of colors are wrong. I don't know why. Like the dots aren't big enough, and like the Goomba face and shape is like wrong, and like Bowser is like more cute than threatening. He looks actually.
I'd agree with that.
Right, like he actually looks pretty good, but he's this like weird kind of cutesy. He almost looks like a children's toy.
Yeah, I think that if I remember correctly, I would agree with you that Bowser, like seeing him now versus seeing, Mega Bowser in like the current games, definitely he is super low poly. And in this case, it kind of shows just because by the very nature of what he is, he's like complex, Yeah. But that being
a lot of spikes, the big turtle shell, the red hair. Yeah.
But I just still remember like the things that hit me about Bowser when I first played this was the music, which we'll get into, was so greatly paired with him and like him showing up, and all of a sudden I was like, oh god, like it's super, and he was so big and like looming, and I was just kind of like, yes, oh god, this is what Bowser has always been. And now definitely looking back at Bowser, I was like, oh, like he looks like, the progenitor of all the other Bowsers, like the first Bowser that evolution like hadn't quite gotten right, like an anarchic Bowser,
Yeah, no, it's I think it's something about the mouth and the eyes, because the body actually looks pretty good, right? Because he has claws, so you can make his hands pointy and his feet pointy, and his shell is pointy, so like all of that in low poly works pretty well because triangles. But when you get to the face and you need basically the only part on his body that has noticeable curves, right? He almost has like a puppy dog's face, like big kind of round cheeks and stuff, and it just doesn't work in low poly. It just super doesn't work. And he doesn't ever quite look like that again for obvious reasons, because they already knew what Bowser looked like. He'd been drawn in 2D, right? And then they did the best they could with the pixel sprites, but then when they got to 3D, they were just like, oh, this is what we got. Unless we make him 10 times Mario's size, and then we'd have more triangles to work with, but then the N64 will crash to 2 frames per second.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things, and the last thing I have for visuals is that you can tell. I'm not saying that, like obviously you're not going to go back in this and be like, oh man, it's on par with Call of Duty 4. Like this isn't The Last of Us HD remastered. It's not that. That being said, I cannot think of a time, and I think this for 2 reasons. I cannot think of a time when I did not know what something was.
Oh yes, yeah. No, as far as how the visuals served the gameplay, oh yeah, no,
yeah.
You knew what everything was. You knew what it was going to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think part of that, the Nintendo's always been, they've had a benefit for this, but they've leveraged it well, which is their brand recognition, know? So, I mean, that's the thing is when I walked in, I may not have known that Goomba was evil, even though it did definitely like jump up and then aggressively come at me. So that would be like, oh, I don't like that. But at the same point in time, they're like, these people are probably, like, what a Goomba is. You've seen a chain chomp before. You've seen some of this stuff. So between that and just, again, the fact that, like, even the penguins, even the horribly, horribly crying, obnoxious, terrible, awful, no good, very bad penguins, right? Even them, I knew what they were.
Yes. Yeah. No matter how low fidelity something was, it was still recognizable as, whatever object it was supposed to be. And more importantly, you always knew a piranha plant was going to behave like a piranha plant once you saw how a piranha plant behaved, right? You never then later saw a different piranha plant that you were like, oh, this one looks a little different and I don't know what to expect here. Same thing for the rolly balls, same thing for the way coins move in the world, same thing for the bombs, like the Goombas, everything moves in a way that once you learn it, right, because they move in 3D now, but like once you see how they move, the next time you see that enemy or that obstacle or whatever, you recognize it. Even to the point of, there's like I think they're gray and like a light orange or dark yellow, the platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All of those, and you see them in the very first level, and they're given to you in a very safe way, right, because they're right over the ground, where when the platform gets to the top, it doesn't smoothly and parallel to the ground shift from the right side to the left side of the mechanism that's making it go in a circle. It actually flips over at the top, right? Like you're turning the page in a book, and every single time you see a platform with that checker pattern, it moves in that exact same way. Even if that checker pattern does not fit the surrounding environment, they use that as a way to communicate, this is how this platform, remember way back there to the first place you went? This platform is going to move exactly like that platform. And that's something Nintendo has just always been amazing at.
Just, and this time it's over lava as opposed to being over nothing.
Right. Yeah. So it's their ability to communicate, here is how this thing functions. Now, every time you see this thing, don't be surprised when it functions exactly the same way. Like that carried well from 2D to 3D.
One minor thing that, and we should probably cover this mechanics, but I just want to make sure that we touch on it, is I love the sleeping piranha plants just because, it's like, oh, you gotta sneak up on them, gotta be all super, super sly and super quiet. Or if you get a running jump, you can just dive into them
and murder them.
Yeah. And so like, I remember when I figured that out and again, like, I was like sneaking up on like the third one. I'm like, God, this sucks. You know what? Nintendo's better than this. hold my beer. And like just at the last one, just sprinted and just like full on Superman Mario'd into him. And he died. I was like, yeah, that is the only way I'm going to be interacting with these piranha plants moving forward.
Yeah, no, yes. There are a lot of times in Mario games, old and new, that I find they almost reward recklessness, where they're like, yeah, you can take this super slow, but like, it's a video game. Like, just while out, like, have some fun. And I appreciate that. But I'm going to steal your segue and say, like, you talked about the Bowser music, so let's talk about music now.
Okay.
Sorry. Let's move on to the audio portion of our program.
Why, yes, Lions. I believe that would be a good idea. One of the things that I thought that there was I thought that the honestly, all of the music, I mean, this I can't. It's hard for me to dissociate myself from my nostalgia goggles, because this music is not as iconic as Super Mario World, but it's pretty close.
It is. I mean, even for the tiny amount that I played this as a kid, I like when I went into the first little, Sex Bomb Kingdom or whatever. It's just like dun, 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 dun. And I was like, I know exactly where I am. I know exactly what I'm doing. Like, how do I have nostalgia for a thing I don't have nostalgia for? It's super iconic. It's weirdly catchy, very toe tappy.
It is, and like the race music, like do 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 do, like all of that's just super enjoyable. I felt that it's all very tonally appropriate. Like when you're in like the lava level, it's not like fun and jumpy and peppy or like ragtime or anything like that. It's like kind of like weird and kind of And like Bowser's music is correct and intense, especially the Bowser Castle, I guess, music, the stuff right before
the level right before the fight.
Yeah, like I got to that, and again, like I didn't get to the final Bowser level, which is, if memory serves, pretty intense.
Yeah.
But like right when I heard that music, I was just like my grip tightened on the controller a little bit, broke out a little bit into sweat, because I was like, oh God, I remember this, like this is. So I would say the music is stellar. Honestly, I think that if you're saying like just looking at the music in and of itself, it holds up. I listen to this on the radio presently.
Yeah, no, and the thing that Nintendo did in this era, that for them was a huge departure, is they historically had to prioritize, even in other Super Mario games, they had to prioritize sounds that gave you feedback about your actions or enemy actions in the world over the music. So you might be listening to a song and they're like, hey, we need that channel to dedicate to this, monster sound, or to Mario doing whatever. And so a part of the song, never the whole song, but a part of the song would just get dropped out. Like that instrument was temporarily, they were having a coughing fit or whatever. And so the horns don't come in, and it's like, it's a fine thing. I mean, like, we played classic games for this, but like also on our own, and like it's just a thing. You make your peace with it. But in this era and beyond, they didn't have to do that anymore, because they had like literally 10 times as many audio channels to like shove sound out into the speakers, even though you're probably playing on a mono television, which is like its own weird thing. But they could push out music and in-universe sound effects at the exact same time. So every time there was like a catchy tune, I think like almost subconsciously you're like, oh, but as I play the game, I get to continue listening to the catchy tune. It's never going to drop out when I do a triple jump. It's not going to drop out when a bomb explodes. I'm not going to hear like a weird harmony only version when Mario's yahooing or something. Like and that's just like a little subconscious thing that like you benefit from the leap into the 64-bit era, is like, not only is this music iconic, but I get to hear it.
Yeah, which is neat. So I mean, music, aside from just the fact that it's delicious. Nothing too much more there for my end. I think the sound effects, again, like as Nintendo typically does, very much so service the gameplay very well. I think that, especially Mario's sound effects, I think, are particularly important because
his like the things he says,
right? Yeah, like because those are really sound effects. It ain't dialogue, like. Yeah. But it are important because like like the who wah yahoo like lets you know which
jump you're doing.
Which jump you're on. Yeah, which is nice. It's easy to remember. But also, too, I got hurt or flubbed it noise. They like, there's like a difference between like his, where he like where you have hit something that will slow you down but will not hurt you. Right. And then there's the like ow, where you've now done something that will like that has hurt you and is taking away life. You know, like those are two different sound effects because they mean two different things, and that's all giving you feedback. Which, considering that some of like the camera angles, which we'll get to, are imperfect. It's helpful because sometimes the camera will be like dead behind you, and you won't see the visual of like Mario struggling or falling on his butt. So like, but when you hear like that, you're like, okay, I'm down for 1.5 seconds. And that's important.
So I agree with you that they communicate useful information, and I will agree with you that most of them actually sound like charming and pleasant, like the wah, ya, yahoo, or whatever it is for the jumps, yahoo, right? That like on the big triple jump. The noise, like when you go to jump into a painting or you go to move like from platform to platform and you flub it and you hit a wall and he goes, that is not the same dude. Like no amount of evidence can convince me that isn't like Bill the cleaning guy who they were like, oh no, we didn't record, or like we thought we pressed record when the voice actor was here, but we like the sound file got lost or something. But Bill, come in here and okay, read this line. It just says UHHN. Yeah, it's like like you got hit in the stomach. Just read that. Okay, all right, that's great. Thanks. Okay, bye. That. It doesn't sound like the same guy because not just that it's lower and that it's like more of a guttural noise than every other noise. Because even his other getting hurt noises are kind of like oh no, right? Like they're very Mario.
I'm sorry, they're like what?
Oh no!
I gotcha. Yeah. Okay, I missed it the first time. Thank you.
Actually, I feel like that was almost identical the second time.
Really? I don't know. That's all three.
Oh no! There was no audio trickery there. If those sound alike, that was actually me.
just go back and edit it the same way.
It's totally BS, everybody. But the when you bang into a wall, not only does it not sound right, but I find it frustrating because that's the noise of like, you suck. Because you tried to like jump up onto a platform that you didn't realize was too high for your normal jump. You needed the double jump. It irritated me so much. And
was it the noise that irritated you? Or
it was the failure.
Yeah, it was your failure.
It was the reminder of the failure. Because if it was like a cute Mario noise, then I'd be like, oh, it's okay, Mario. We're going to save that princess. But it's just like Bill, the cleaning guy.
Because you failed so hard, you knocked the Mario out of him.
Knocked the Mario out of his hair.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely, it's the stark reminder of my failure and my continued failure and my ongoing failure.
But they did have a number of like good sound effects, like even like the piranhas. They make a very distinctive sound.
Yeah.
A lot of enemies when they aggro to you, they make a little like whoop or something like.
Yeah, like the Goomba does almost like a Looney Tunes, like I'm gonna start running.
Yeah, and then they'll make like a continued noise of like coming towards you.
It's like a little waddle noise usually.
Yeah, which again in a 3D game with an iffy camera, which we'll get to, is super important, right? Because something may be aggroing to you that you're like actually, honest to God, unaware of, like it is behind you. You know,
and this is a thing about sound that I feel like people forget, particularly in video games, is sight. Assuming you have two eyes and you have binocular vision, like sight is a 3D thing, but sound is a 3D thing. Like sound gives you spatial information. So if you were playing this on a 13-inch CRT 12-inch television, like most of it, or mono television is what I meant to say at the end, not change the measurement.
We just lost 10 subscribers because of that,
they're
right?
all gone. I'm sorry.
Because of that one flub.
I understand.
I'm not mad. I am just disappointed.
I empathize with their choice. If any of you can hear me, I understand and I forgive you. But you're getting mono output, but the fact that you can hear the noise at all is a kind of 3D placement information because it's like, well, I don't see it in front of me, but I just heard the Goomba aggro noise. So it's either in my periphery or behind me, right? It's not in this front 180 degrees of the circle. It's in the back 180 degrees where I can't see. So even on a mono speaker, you still are getting some kind of like spatial placement information. I don't know that I actually agreed with some of the sound choices. I don't know how like loud, because I mean you have kids, right? So like a lot of times when we're playing video games, they're down kind of quiet. I try and play with headphones on sometimes to like get better audio. But some of the sparkly sounds, particularly the coin, like when you pick up a coin and when you open up a thing that releases the star, they must have sat down and they were like, oh my God, we have like 100 channels of audio. We could make this twinkling sound go across 99 of those channels. And it's just, there's way too much high end on some of those sparkly sounds. And it's possible that they mixed those for older televisions and the way you would hear them on a mono television. And maybe it did sound different at the time. But I noticed when I was playing this time, I was like, a lot of these have way more treble than they need. Like there's.
And you're all about that bass.
I'm all about that bass.
No trouble.
But there's like the sparkliness and then there's like this high tinniness that a lot of the sparkly visuals that were coupled with those kinds of sounds, like I just found like a tiny bit grating. Fortunately, they're usually like, it's like a quick burst. Like here's a star, here's a coin. So like it doesn't last long, which helps. But I definitely noticed, I was like, they needed to tone this down, but they were just overexcited.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. And again, it's something I didn't really pick up on because as you said, like it's not, you're not getting fed that a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see that. The one final note I had for audio, which is something that I definitely didn't pick up on for myself, but the more people that know this, the better, is that Bowser's laugh and Boo's laugh are the same laugh, and that's kind of awesome.
I believe it's Bowser's laugh is the actual
it's
sound
the actual
effect,
sound.
and then for Boo, they sped it up like 5 times or something. It's super fast.
Exactly, which I thought, I was like, neat when I found that out, and now I have a forum to let other people find that out, and so I'm doing my due diligence, you know.
Well, you're a good man, Charlie Brown. And you mentioned that Nintendo is smart about saving space on visual assets, and that is probably the best known place they save space on an auditory asset, because what they did was they recorded one sound and then every time you hear Boo laugh, it's actually the same sound that's just being played back faster. So they only have to store the one sound in memory, right? And there are definitely other places where they probably did that. Like, oh, when you do this thing, it's actually these like 3 noises being played at the same time. And if you heard them in isolation, you would realize it's the A, the B, and the C that you hear all the time. But when you hear them layered together, it sounds like the D, right?
I mean,
childish.
Look, whatever.
Yeah,
we all heard it. right. Like I was right there with you, and then all of a sudden, like you said the final bit, and I didn't even see it coming.
God, no, it's
awful,
okay, awful. It's awful.
It's bad, and you should feel bad.
It's a family show about a family game.
Yeah.
God,
I mean, I've been really good about my cocaine references too. And you bring that stuff in.
We don't want to get kids onto that stuff.
I know, right?
Yeah,
but,
I mean, once you go Mario, you're definitely going to go Ocarina of Time.
I mean, you've seen his nose, right?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't have anything else.
Yeah.
On that.
So come on, man. Come on. Give me the camera, man.
Camera section.
Yeah. Let's do the camera. Let's do it.
So the camera in this is terrible and I hate it. And anyone who could possibly defend this is a liar and I hate them. Because here's the thing.
Way to stay scientific.
Yeah.
Way to stay scientific, Jerry.
So a lot of Rick and Morty this episode.
I know,
I like
right?
it.
Yeah.
I like it. No, I'm not complaining. Here's the thing. 3D, as you said, it's not even quantifiable, right? It's a massive sea change of design considerations, and the camera is probably the biggest one because that was not a thing before. It's not like, oh, how are we going to design platforms? Well, you know what platforms are. You know how to measure jump arcs and how to make like the amount of life you have relative to the amount of damage you take, balance. Those are all things that existed in 2D games. Cameras were not. And the fact that you don't have full control over the camera may be a processor thing, but I don't think so.
I don't think so, honestly.
I think it was an explicit design choice.
Because I honestly, I think it's that they didn't honestly think that players could control both at the same time.
Yeah, maybe not. Or that they were like, we don't want people to have to do that.
Right. Like we want to offload that from them because, you know, I mean, to be fair, what game up until that point did you have to do that?
None.
Exactly.
None
so I mean,
games.
like it would be a very logical thing to say, like, in what game have you had to have complete 3-dimensional control of a character and control the camera at the same time. That is way too much for any singular human process. We have to take this from them.
Yeah. But here's how I know they knew that they had not really cracked it, because this is something, you know, I've been working in technology my whole career, and you hear people who are trying to get venture capital funding say all the time, like, this problem that no one else has been able to solve, we cracked it. I'm not going to show you or tell you how, but please give me a bunch of money.
But it has something to do with underpants.
Always underpants. And they're electric. I know that they themselves, the designers in this game, did not feel that way about their own camera system, because the very first thing they do in the game after you take 20 steps toward the castle is the... How do you say that thing's name? I always said Lakitu.
I always said like to, but I'm probably wrong because I have a real bad history of trying to pronounce fantasy.
So Sky Turtle comes down and they...
That's racist.
It's... What do you call someone who's against other people's religions? Are they just
Cretist?
a bigot? Cretist?
Yeah.
That's Cretist.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's Apollo Cretist. So Sky Turtle comes down and they had to do this. They had to be like, hey, video game player, cameras are a thing now. Be aware of that, right? Like, they had to introduce players to this mechanic. But the first thing that Sky Turtle does is say, we are professionals. We will be controlling the camera. But if you don't think we're doing a good job, here's how you control it. And not only can you change a little bit of the Sky Turtle camera, but you can then switch to Mario mode, which gives you an entire secondary set of controls for the camera that are specific to the way when the little Mario picture is near the camera. So this almost makes me think like one designer or one group of the designers was like, okay, this is the obvious way we should do a camera. And then the other group of designers were like, no, this is the obvious way. And then I guess Shigeru Miyamoto, whoever had to make this decision, was like,
put your hands together.
No, I think it's worse. I think whoever had to make that decision was like, neither of these feel right. And then they just shipped both.
Nice. And they're like, let's see. So what I think happened was that they said, you know, we can't possibly ask this of the player. We can't have them doing both, period. So we're going to do this. And then somebody said, like, that's really frustrating if you were actually trying to get like a first person like view of your surroundings, right? If you're really trying to like focus in on that. So we need to have them be able to do that too. And it's like, okay, well, if we do an alternate camera, all that being said, I'm not going to defend the camera. It is absolute hot garbage. Just as like a thought experiment, for like the in-game, like justification of it. Because again, mechanically as a game, terrible and in a way that is insidious. Because you have gotten, all of you, are you listening? All of you, the players, have gotten so used to being able to control the camera that the minute that you can't, it's almost like losing an arm. You know,
well, and it fights you sometimes.
Oh yeah,
where you hit like the C right, left or C right, and it starts to pan and then just pans right back.
Yep,
and you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah, or like you get it to where you want it to be, and then you start moving in a direction, and it immediately sinks like right back to where you didn't want it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So here's like the thing, and they kind of like allude to it, which is that Mario, like you are controlling two different humans, right? Like you're controlling Mario, that's you. And Mario is literally shouting directions at this cameraman, like no, give me this angle. But they, like when they're like, we're professionals, but if you don't think that we're doing it right, you can redirect us. But I don't think that the Sky Turtles like that.
No.
They
do not.
So they like rail, like, so there's like this, like, to me, like there's this inter drama and strife between Mario and Sky Turtle, and that was kind of my stories, or so I'd be like, all right, Sky Turtle, I need you to move 3 degrees to the left. The left. I thought you were a professional. We are professionals. No, clearly you're not. Because I asked you to do this. You don't know what you're talking about. This isn't what you pay us for. I don't pay you at all. Like like that. But I mean, in all honesty, like that little nugget is like what kept me going through it. But holy moly, is that frustrating.
Well, I mean, so just by way of some examples in no particular order, like There's a thing where you have to like you do a thing and then like it unlocks the star, and then like the monkey, there's like a little monkey, and he like jumps over and grabs the star, and then he knocks it down, and then you have to go get it. So I'm playing in front of Susan, which, honey, if you're listening, I'm so sorry, because I don't think she's seen me that upset for a while.
He is actively shaking his head and giving a middle finger right now. I don't know. I mean, it's really different what he's saying. And
his voice sounds sorry, but his face says laughter. There's a smile in his eyes. So like he knocks the star down, and the camera pans completely out of the way so that now 100% of the screen is just the mountain rocky texture. And I just was like, and I'm about to make a lot more work for myself since I'm the one who produces the show, but I was just like, great camera angle, guys. Thanks a lot for that. That's what I need to see. I need to see the side of the mountain. No, don't need to know where the star is. And then I walked over and like tried to look down to where it might have fallen, but you can't just do that. You can't just freely control the camera and look where you need to look. So I was like, I'm just going to have to jump down there and hope that not only do I land near the star, but that I don't die on the way. Like, I was like, this is broken. This is fundamentally broken.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that in all honesty, Nintendo learned two things. One is that that system don't work. And you can clearly point to the fact that they learned that because they never did anything like that again. Like, you know, they were like, this is the way to do it. But two, I think that, you know, there's the Toyota concept of true north, which is the idea that, like, you know, it's a perfect statement that you will never attain, but it unifies your vision. And the thing is that you can't beat yourself up from like straying from it. You just have to like recognize that you've strayed from it and then realign. And I think that that Nintendo in general is really good at staying to their true north of respecting the player. You know? Yes,
especially in their main series.
Yeah, in their
games
core,
like Mario.
Yeah, in their core IP. That being said, I think that this is with all of the nuance and detail and transition that went in from 2-dimension to 3-dimension, I think in this area they stopped respecting the player. And they said, like, no player could do this. And they didn't even bother giving players the chance to try.
Yeah.
And because of that, this is one of the biggest gaping failures in this game. Like we said, like visuals from a 64-bit era oddly hold up. Sound is amazing. This breaks it, and it's a huge problem.
Most of our video game playing, I don't know, maybe 50-50, but like we play, you know, PlayStation era games or PlayStation 4 era games, right? Like current gen console games. I have a Switch, which has double thumbsticks. PlayStation controllers have had double thumbsticks forever. Xbox controllers have had double thumbsticks forever. The N64 controller has one thumbstick, which is fine. But being used to modern games, there was that part of me that was like, well, I mean, how would you even control the camera without another thumbstick? Oh, wait, you would use the C buttons. Because if you wanted to rotate, you would just hold it longer and it would rotate further. And then if you wanted to stop and you needed to backpedal, you would switch to the other direction and you would rotate it back a little bit. And I know that would be clunkier than using a second thumbstick, but it really does. I mean, I honestly think you're right. I really think they were like, no human could coordinate this way. And maybe the best information they had at the time was that was true. But I don't think that they actually felt that way. Because if you look in the direction that Nintendo controls went from this era on, they had the Nintendo controller, which was beautifully simple. They had the Super Nintendo controller, which added more buttons, but in a way that made them all accessible. They had the N64 controller, which added a thumbstick in a W shape. And then they had the GameCube controller, where they were like, what if just crap load of buttons? But those buttons were laid out in a way that their size and position helped you identify which button it was. They were shaped slightly differently. They were curved in interesting ways. They were different sizes. Like, you could tell a lot about a GameCube controller without ever looking at it, right? Whereas like most controllers, all the buttons look and feel about the same. And then they went to the Wii and they were like, no more buttons. And they've been on this kick ever since, where they were just like, what if not controls? And we don't have to go like way down into that rabbit hole, because I go way down into that rabbit hole, but I think this is where it started, where they were like, we don't really trust you to do this.
Right. And so, you know, I think that's a very and again, I think that it shines through as like the big failure of this game. So, you good? You good on the camera?
I'm good on the camera.
Okay.
I have other things.
Oh no, I've got other stuff too. I just knew that you have had this like red hot hate for it, and I just want to make sure I want safe space.
Yeah,
got
no. I will say the amount of time this will be my last camera thing until I come up with more.
He is shaking his head and flipping the middle finger. I can't.
the amount of times that I died or was seriously set back because of camera shenanigans was experience ruining.
Yeah.
Like it was an experience ruining number of times where I was just like, if I had control over the camera or if they were prescriptive, here is a fixed Resident Evil style, this is where the camera is in the room. If they made those kinds of prescriptive choices, or if I had something closer to total control, that 90% of those, oh, you died, or oh, you got thrown way back to the beginning of the level, would not have happened.
Well, and I think that this is, and I'm really interested to see how the PlayStation and N64 era games go, because this is technically, I mean, like when we were playing, the Nintendo and SNES ones, we were like, oh, let's do this, and some of them I played, some of them only I had played, some of them only you had played, most of them we had both played. The best tests that we have are the ones where one of us has played them.
Right.
Because then like I am looking at it through nostalgia goggles and you are not.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great support for it requiring nostalgia goggles, is because it did not hit me nearly as hard, but simply because I could harken back and like I had already built into my brain the kludges to deal with a lot of that stuff, So like, like my brain just immediately said like, oh yeah, the camera's going to like pan away in some like weird way. Just wait through it. It'll come back around, And like, I just knew that.
Right.
That being said, one of the things I did think that they did well mechanically was, and I don't know for sure because there's so many Mario games, so don't at me on this. But that being said, life. Right?
Like this was the introduction of health.
Yeah. And I think a very important one, right? Because before then, as we said with like original Super Mario Bros. and original Super Mario Brothers and then Mario
all the way up through World, yeah.
Yeah, World. Right? It was just quantized by power up, right?
Yeah.
Like you could get hit once, maybe twice, depending on how powered up you were, right? But I mean, you had between 1 to 3 hit points, typically, right? Yeah. This time you've got a ton of hit points.
6. Mm-hmm. You have a little pie.
Yeah, yes. So you have 6 hit points, and it is way easier to get hit points back.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's the weird heart thing that doesn't make any damn sense, but there's just like a heart around sometimes. Coins. Mm-hmm. Coins give you health back, gold and red, and stars, even though they exit you from the level, which maybe we'll talk about that if we have time.
But and blue coins as well.
Coins as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, that was a very important mechanic, and here's why: is because
and breathing. Mm-hmm. Breathing restores all of your health, which is weird. They didn't keep that. That changes later.
No, they didn't. And again, I think that's the thing where they're like, look, man, we can't give them a billion different bars. This isn't a resource management game, So they were like, well, we can't give them like a breathing bar. So like, let's just make it life. Well, then they'd have to get the life back when they surface. So then if all of a sudden you're at like 1 hit point, you just dive into some water, which makes me think that Mario is actually a water elemental, but you can dive into that headcanon in a little bit. But anyways, that being said, is that I think that the transition to life was very important because the types of things that can hurt you and like what you can be expected to manage in 3 dimensions is like, I mean, you're managing the same amount. There's just a whole lot more coming at you, right? So you have to have more depth of errors, like more things, or actually it's a gradient of failure states, right? Mm-hmm. So, which actually, I just saw a thing recently that said, like, what makes for interesting gameplay is if you really want to have an interesting experience, like even like from a role-playing standpoint, is create a spectrum of fail states, right? So like where like you can a good example being a game I haven't played, but that you can probably speak to is Metal Gear Solid.
Oh yes.
So like where it's just kind of like the idea is that you should be like stealthily moving around and doing whatever. But if a guard kind of a little bit sees you, you can go back into hiding. So that's like the lowest. It is a failure state, but it's the lowest possible failure state, right? And then like things can get really out of hand before you die. But the thing that you're not going to do is like if all of a sudden like you've been spotted and you had to kill that guy, but then somebody else found you and all this sort of stuff, you're not going to stop the game, quit out, and then jump back in. because you've been allowed to reach a failure state that you can recover from.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's death kicks you out of that attempt, right? But getting caught doesn't. There are actually, you can play on game modes where that does count as like game over. But most people don't. And it's not that's for challenge. That's not the way the game was designed to be, right? Like I want to be able to take more than one hit because Mario should be tougher than that.
Right. And what this person was saying, and I promise this will link back, is that the idea is that like what some people will do is the minute that something goes wrong, they'll reload a save. So they're saving constantly, and then they're like, oh, something went wrong. So what you do to prevent people from doing that, to get an actual good gaming experience and a good story, is you create a failure spectrum, to where you can fail a little bit more, a lot, but it's you have to get really bad in the failure state before you'd be like, I can't really recover from this. Like it's perma-killed 3 of my people,
right?
Whatever. So I'm going to back out and reload a save. So with Mario, I think that it was important to increase the spectrum of failure states because otherwise you would be constantly being booted and then being put back into the level, and that would create a degree of difficulty that is untenable. One of the other things that they did that coupled with that I thought was very clever, because life is life, is the wait time between failure of jumping.
You mean like till you can jump again?
Till you can do anything again. So like let's say that you jump and you miss it and you hit a wall, right? You got a 1.5 second delay before you can do anything, right? Because you hit the wall, you hit the ground, you get back up, right? Somebody else can come get you during that time, right? Or so like that's like but the thing is you don't lose any health for that, right? So that's the minimum failure state, right? Now there are some failure states where like you'll do that. If you do that when there are a bunch of enemies around, chances are they're going to eat your lunch a little bit and you're going to lose some health. The maximum failure state is when you duff a jump and you fall a great distance, because then you squish down.
Yeah, and now you're immobilized.
And
you got hurt.
Which is the maximum failure state, which in a platformer makes sense, right? You duff the platform, right?
Yeah.
You are now in maximum failure state, which I thought was kind of a clever, and I think probably one of the first times we've seen that kind of like failure spectrum in a video game.
Well, I mean, I guess you could argue that any life bar is a kind of spectrum, but it's a less complex kind, right? Like Mega Man could take a bunch of hits, but your 4th hit and your 2nd hit and your 8th hit are all the same. You're just a little bit closer to being dead, right? Whereas in Super Mario 64, like if you duff a jump and you just do the into the wall, then like, okay, I gotta back up and try again, right? So you lose like a couple seconds, you feel like an idiot, your failures are out there for everyone to see and taunt you about. But that's it. Like you're not any closer to death. You just lost. Well, you, the player, are closer to death because time has passed. Mario's fine. But if you
Jesus. That's okay. And for all of our listeners out there, you are closer to death from the first time you started listening to this. So take a deep breath.
We all march toward the grave together.
Go hug your loved ones, I guess. I don't know. Let's all take just a moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know, despite making a podcast, you're not a heavy podcast listener. A lot of players, including the one I use, Pocket Cast, which should sponsor us because I like trumpet them super loud. Yahoo! Pocket Cast. No more for free. They will strip silence for you. So there's a whole bunch of people who, from their point of view, there was no cap there at all.
Huh. Yeah. So that makes it sound like super irreverent and irrespectful because we were like, all right, a moment of silence. So, anyways,
yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly like that. Yeah. But so like having that kind of stratified way of reminding you that you have screwed up, I think is definitely not first of its kind, but certainly first for us. I can't think of any other games that had that sort of.
And first for Mario is what I'm saying. Is that like
it
was the first time because what they said was, again, going from 2D to 3D. They said the failure spectrum of 3 hit points is way too little, and we can't keep relying on insane number of power. We can't give them power ups on power ups on power ups on power ups because that's going to get weird and clunky. So it's like, okay, new idea. Let's add health, which is not in service to the brand. You know, which I kind of want to pat Nintendo on the back to be like, what we're doing won't work, so let's do something different.
So thought experiment, and I'm not trying to crap on Nintendo. I'm just trying to think what this design process would realistically have been like. So they're like, okay, we're going to do 3D. We got to build this brand new game engine. We got to build all these new visuals and everything. How are we going to make Mario look? All these decisions they have to make. When do you think that decision was actually made? Because where I think it might have been made is that people were playing and then they got wanged by something that came at them from behind the camera that they could not have possibly dodged. They died and they were like, yeah, this isn't fun.
Yep. Yeah, no, actually, honestly, if I had to guess, right, and I don't think that this is crapping on Nintendo. I think it's actually giving them props, which is it was determined in playtesting, and then they changed the game, which you should absolutely do.
Yes.
And you should playtest, where it's just kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, they didn't invent health bars.
No, they didn't. But
they realized this was the time they must apply one.
Exactly. So, basically, they were like, okay, Mario's going to go in, and let's just say, there's going to be small Mario and big Mario, and then there's all these power-ups which are rare, which we may or may not get to.
Yeah.
But that being said, there's small Mario, big Mario, let's do this thing. And then booted from the level, and they're looking at the cycle times of these players and their success ratios, and they're like, oh my God, they're getting eaten alive. What are we going to do? We've got all of this money sunk into this thing. And it's like, wait, health bar. Yes. Incentivize that employee, you know?
No, it really, and I wouldn't even put it past Shigeru Miyamoto and team and friends to have thought of in Super Mario Brothers, even up through Super Mario World, because in Super Mario World, if you have the cape and you take a hit, you don't become small Mario, you become normal Mario.
Right.
Then you take a hit and now you are small Mario, then you take a hit and you die. Right? So
3 HP.
Yeah. But I would not be surprised at all to know that they thought, well, yeah, that Mario's full life bar is 3 hit points. And now it's 6.
Right.
So, and they did 2 things. They didn't just give you 6 hit points. They uncoupled the power-up mechanic from taking damage. Because 1, a lot of the power-ups make you essentially immortal while you have them. And 2, you don't lose your power-up if you get hit now. You just take damage.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that as I said, is that, I thought that was a very smart choice, a good transition, and clearly one that they agreed with because they have stuck with it in all Mario's since, to the point where, you don't really even realize that this switch happened, at this game, because it's you want to play Super Mario World? Yeah. Does Super Mario have hit points? No, that'd be weird. It's you play Super Mario Galaxy? Yeah. Does he have life bar? Does he have hit points? Yeah. Yes. Wait.
If he didn't, that'd be weird.
Yeah,
right?
It'd be weird.
No, it feels appropriate to the universe, to the level of difficulty, to the fact that sometimes you will get blindsided and there's nothing you could have done about it, but you got a lot of life. So it feels appropriate.
Absolutely. But what else you got for me, man?
So I need to talk about 2 things. And I think we should talk about cycle time here because it feels relevant to the health. I didn't like the cycle time in this. And I think it's an artifact of the jump to 3D.
Get good.
Yes. That's essentially what it feels like they're saying all the time. And here's the swear-filled diatribes that Susan had to sit through, minus most of the swears. So
deep breath, kids.
So when you are doing something in a Mario game, and I'm specifically calling out Mario games because they are so well known for their level design and being mechanic A, mechanic B, mechanic C maybe, and now here's some combination of those things.
The twist.
Yeah, all together, right? And now usually in a boss fight, but now you have to deal with those things all together, right? Mega Man also amazing at this. Sonic used to be okay at this. This is a really important thing in video game design because you have to teach through gameplay.
It's a great thing in learning. I have a friend that is in education, and I kind of I'm most Mario games they'll give you mechanic A, this new thing, but they'll give it to you in a safe space. Then they give it to you in a dangerous space, and then they give it to you in a twist where it's the same mechanic, but they've done something completely different with it. And then normally there's the falling action. She's that's just straight up education.
Yes.
They're just teaching you.
Yes, because they have to.
Right.
I mean, it is part of the fun, and it is also literally a requirement. Otherwise, the games would be unplayable.
Right.
So I don't feel like they had quite dialed in what it meant to screw something up in 3D at this point in Mario's history, because there are several times where there's a lot of the levels, like if the camera didn't suck and you could zoom way out, what you would be able to see is, oh, this is actually a very small world, but it's laid out in a clever way so that I feel like I'm traversing this huge amount of area. But really, I'm just kind of running in circles, or I'm climbing up a spiral, or I'm descending, right? It's
Into madness.
When you stare into the abyss. So there's a lot of that going on, which is great level design. Stop staring into my abyss.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is what happens when we record in the same room.
I mean, you know what? That's the thing, man, is I was all about thing A, B, and C, but then I was all about the... Anyways, it doesn't matter.
So there are several times, and I mean most of the levels where you are ascending, where if you get hit, if you flub a jump, you fall back an unreasonable distance. And here's why the distance is unreasonable. It's not because a bunch of your time is wasted. It's not because now you have to retraverse all of this level you've already traversed. It's because the thing you screwed up is not part of what you now have to do again. So now you have to waste time reclimbing the mountain, but you're not practicing the thing you just screwed up. So there's just like a 45-second penalty, like think about what you did before you get to attempt the thing you screwed up before. So all of these times in like older Mario games and later Mario games for that matter, where they would have said like, oh man, you really messed that up. We're going to put you to right before the first time we showed you that thing so that when you try again, you'll try it again in a safe space, then you'll try it again in a dangerous space, and then you'll try it again with the twist, right? But in Super Mario 64, it's like a lot of the times the first time you see a thing, or maybe the second time you see a thing, they're like, oh, you screwed it up. All right, do a couple laps around the house, run around the block, and then come back and try again. And it's like, how will running around the block teach me how to deal with this problem? It won't.
So you're wrong, and here's why. No. No,
I mean, dude, if you can convince, I don't think you can. If you can convince me, that would be amazing.
I can't convince you that this is good. I can convince you the kludge that they use to get around it.
All right.
You don't need all the stars to win the game. So, because I definitely hit a couple of spaces of what you're talking about. Specifically, the one that I remember was it wasn't Enter the Volcano, but it was like something. It was like the lava level where it was where you had again, it was an ascending level for sure. Right?
Oh, and then with the poles, that is Enter the Volcano.
That was it. Oh, great.
Or into the volcano or whatever. But yes,
I think it's elevator in the volcano, because Enter the Volcano is the first time you climb up a little bit. The one with the poles is like elevator, because you get onto one of those things and it goes up.
Yes.
Anyways, so that's the thing. Is that like I jumped onto one of the poles, and again, to your credit, the camera angles and jumping from pole to pole, completely unbearable, and in part because you don't get the shadow typically in between.
Yeah, because you're up in the air.
Yeah, so which makes sense like physically, but not in game. So anyway, so I missed that jump, right? Hit the lava, tagged, down, out of level, abandoned it forever, moved on.
Okay, so
I'm not saying that that's right, but I'm saying that that's where they were just kind of like, look, man, some of these stars, and I may be wrong on this because I definitely haven't done the legwork on it, but I would guess that a lot of those stars were like, they're using like really high level skill stuff are the later stars, and so that way it's like star 5 or 6, where it's like, yeah, you want to clear out this level, do this thing. Now it should be challenge based for challenge based, not challenge based because it's broken. But that being said, is they were just kind of like, look, just don't do it.
Yeah. So my pushback on that, because I think you are probably right, but my pushback would be two things. One, they do not nearly heavily communicate enough in a game that shoves a lot of information in your face via signs. They do not nearly heavily communicate enough. Hey, you don't need all these. You can just get some in every course. Did you realize they're called courses? That's weird. But and I think they've always been called courses, and it's still weird. Or maybe after like Mario 1.
It's because it's a TV show, right? Yeah, no, it is. It's because it's a TV show. This is all for our entertainment. Yeah. And it's I think that you have voters at home and they like upvote like which course.
Yeah. It's Mario Ninja Warrior.
Yeah.
But they don't push in your face nearly enough. Like, you could stop. Like, just stop. Like, stop torturing yourself. And on the flip side, they do mildly incentivize you to try again, because inside a lot of the courses, you like into the volcano or whatever the hell it's called, you have to jump into the volcano to get to that part where the poles are. If you die and you get kicked out of the level and you go back into that painting, do you start outside the level? No, you start in the volcano. So they're trying to communicate to you like, hey, give it another shot. And it's like, but the part I screwed up was the poles. I don't have any way to practice that until I get back to the part I screwed up where the penalty for failure is death. And like, that just feels like across the courses, they consistently performed below Mario quality expectations in providing a safe place to learn a skill on the way. It needs to be on the way to the place where it's going to be more challenging to use that skill. And to be fair, when you say by Mario standards, you're saying by literally the greatest standards in game design.
By the standard.
Yes,
you know, like
everyone
literally
else
Mario
calibrates.
the standard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I understand, like, I'm using a very difficult yardstick to measure up to on a place where they had all of these new things, new technology, new dimension, new everything that they had to deal with. But it still, it honestly broke the experience for me, which is why I'm being so hard on it. Because there were stars that I abandoned, not because I was like, this is beyond my skill level. There were stars that I abandoned because
the game's broken.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to have to put in the amount of work to get all the way back there again, figure out how to make the camera not be a schmuck about everything. Like, it just felt like they were asking too much.
And I think that, again, just to continue Clash of Lances, because we don't do this very often. Most of the time we're pretty aligned. So I think that...
This is what people show up for.
Yeah, this is. And it's nice that we're physically in person, because at some point they're just going to hear like mics getting knocked out of the way and like just like random like slamming and grunting in the background.
And go to the, like the technical difficulties, like...
Which we could have just edited out. But, like it's like, no, we're professionals. Yeah. We commit to the bit.
True to form.
But no, it's that, and again, I played the game before, but to even just refresh my memory, the first thing I did was I walk into like the big great room, and I see a whole bunch of doors and stuff. So, like I went into like a rando door, started messing around, right? But then like I was like, oh, cool, I'm getting stars and stuff. So I started exploring different doors, and eventually, it within the first half an hour, I'd say, in a game this long, right, is I went to the big star door, and it's like, you need 8 stars or however many to get this. I was like, oh, well, I need 8 stars. There's like 5 rooms in here. So like the minute I got like stuck at a room, I was like, I'm just going to go to another room. And then, I did that. And before I knew it, I had 8 stars. So I went and did that thing. And then I came back. It's like, now you need 30 stars. And it's like, oh, all right. Well, I'm just going to keep doing that. So they do telegraph it a little bit. So that's what I think like I said, I think that you are right in the sense that you should only quit trying because you believe that it's something that you can't do, because you can't do it, not because the game is impeding you from doing it.
Right.
Agree completely with that. I think that basically what happened was they were just kind of like, look, man, we're trying so hard to be the hero, like they're just really trying to like make this 3D game. And it's just like, we can't look, man, this level's just broken, like this level's like, look at all these broken levels. Like, what are we to do? It's like, don't make it mandatory, just sprinkle a whole bunch of extra stars in there. So if they don't like it, they don't have to play it,
Well, and okay, so this is a positive thing that I wanted to tease apart if we have time. So I will quit my whinging to have a positive discussion with you for a minute, which is exactly what
Coward.
you're talking. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's broken. Like, I don't know what else to say there.
Yeah.
But you just touched on something that not only I think is super right about the difficulty curve in the game, but has gone on to be the defining characteristic of basically every later Mario game, which is before Super Mario 64. So, Super Mario Brothers, also Super Mario Land on the Game Boy, Super Mario World on Super Nintendo, like all of those Marios were straight up, you start here, you finish here, get from here to there, and then that's the game, right?
Sometimes there are like some secrets along the way, but like it is very linear. Like those secrets are typically even visually shown as outcroppings.
Right. Yeah. Linear and a pure platformer. Like the challenge is in jumping on stuff and not getting hit by stuff while you jump on stuff.
Fun side note, this does directly tie in, is I was thinking about it recently, is that a platformer, right, is about navigating in being given free access to X number of dimensions and being able to deftly navigate in the dimension above that.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to somebody about it. I was like, yeah, because like in Mario, you move in one dimension, and the skill is being able to deftly navigate in two. In a 3-dimensional platformer, you're given free access to the first 2 dimensions, and then it's your ability to navigate through the third, right? The reason why it came up is because we were talking about the fact that Yoshi in Super Mario World, like the flying Yoshi and the super cape, and they were like, yeah, sometimes that can make the game completely broken. I'm like, yeah, being given unfettered access to the higher dimension, it screws up the game, or
and that's kind of
the
what they're there for.
Exactly.
Because there are levels where you cannot fly over them with the cape, or in Super Mario 3, like with the P-Wing, right? Like you have to, it's like, no, this level's underground, where there's a ceiling. You need to navigate it.
Yeah, you have to be able to. But I thought that was just kind of an interesting way to frame it. It's like you're given this many dimensions, you're asked to navigate deftly in the dimension above that, and that is all platformers.
Yeah. So the difference between all of those platformers and the Super Mario 64 and beyond platformers is getting from point A to point B was the objective. Getting from point A to point B is the objective in 3D Mario, but like they added an additional axis, they added 6 point Bs, right? Now you have B sub 2, B sub 3, B sub 4. And this is important for a couple of reasons, because one, they have now changed the nature of Mario from being a race from the start to the finish to being a world you explore, right? It's like, here is a thing that exists and you are exploring it and looking around and finding red coins and finding stars and finding enemies to defeat and finding sex bombs to talk to who help you, right? Like they introduced an entire social mechanic to Mario that had never existed before, because you're exploring these little island worlds, right? These little courses. And along with that is, now that there's all of these multiple destinations, Mario is now a collect-a-thon. And this is what made me think about this from your earlier point. Is like, you can just ignore some of the stars. You don't have to collect them all. You couldn't.
I mean, you do.
Well, yes. So
therein, as the bard would say, lies the rub.
But I mean, in Super Mario Brothers, you couldn't just decide like,
I don't want to deal with this.
I don't want to deal with this. That is not an option, right? Whereas in Super Mario 64, you can say like, this is annoying me. I'm going to go somewhere else and do something different. And that totally changes the nature of Mario. And every Mario game since Super Mario 64 has followed that formula. 3 dimensions didn't just introduce additional like courses you could, or paths you could navigate in the course, but it introduced different ending points. Because when you pick up a star, it kicks you out of the course, you get your health back, it plays a little victory like dun, 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 and then you can choose to go back in the course, or you can piss off to somewhere else. And if you choose to go back, this is also when they introduced the idea of, now the course is a little different. Now you talk to the bomb guy, and now there's cannons you can use, which lets you access this other area you couldn't get to before. And there's a star up there because you need to collect all the red coins, right? So they introduced this kind of like feeling that you are part of this much larger world, not that you are running a race. And I didn't ever think, because I mean, I've played all the modern Mario games and I've played all of the old Mario games, and I never really thought about when that change happened. And I think it's because I didn't play Super Mario 64 as a kid. But like now seeing, like we played Super Mario World, we've now played Super Mario 64. I was like, oh, not only did this change happen, not only is this a really well thought out and clever change, but I'm really glad they made this change, because just running races over and over would get boring, which is why I don't like any of the new 2D Super Mario games, because they're boring to me. It's just like, what's another way we can put these 6 platforms together that makes them slightly more challenging? What's another way we could put these 6 platforms plus a fire that shoots out of the lava, which makes the timing a little trickier? Like, I've seen the best they could do in Super Mario World. Like, Super Mario World was the pinnacle of the 2D platforming idea. And this introduction of not only the third dimension, but all of these new things that allowed them to...
It's novel.
It's novel, and it has stayed novel because it's exponentially more freedom to be creative.
Well, and I think that the kind of what you're hitting upon is that it more, because up until that point, right, Super Mario appealed to one player type, the achiever, right?
Yeah.
That was it, man. You got from point A to point B, you beat the game, you killed Bowser, rescue this, defeat that, right? Period. That's the game, right?
Check. Go to sleep.
Check. Yeah, go. You're done. Peace. You're out. You're Batman. And they even gave you like cheat ways to do that. Like in the sense, like you could warp to the end.
Pipes, the flute, all that stuff.
So you could literally, like appease the achiever because you're like, I, the achiever, I'm not challenged by this, so I need to go like get these new achievements, these new accolades. And so what they did here is they were like, okay, what if we wanted to rope in explorers as well? Like people who, so like the achiever may play through everything because they want all of the stars, or they want to beat it in the fastest time, or what have you, right? But now the explorer is like
all these new goals.
Yeah, but now the explorer is like, well, I just want to see the world, so I'm just going to go for this star. Maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't, but I want to like see this and see that, and like you're exploring these things, you're exploring these worlds, you're exploring the game mechanics, so they're like kind of like roping that in, like even though it's not even close to what a social mechanic would be. You just say that like you talk to people, you interact. They are all NPCs, there's not like a Mario MMO. There should be a Mario. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is that, like there is, as opposed to in Mario where there was like maybe a singular sign that like gave you direct like dialogue, like now there's like some NPCs you can talk to that just deliver random dialogue, which again, like is a drop in the bucket for what socializers need, but it does give you a mild component of that,
Well, and it took a world you interacted with in almost no ways, right? Because Super Mario World had some, like, you step on a switch and it tells you what a switch does. And there's a couple of signs, literally in the entire game. There's like 2 or 3 signs. But Super Mario 64, there's like crap all over the place. People talk to you. There's signs you read everywhere. There's freaking toads that like ghost hide in corners. That's a weird thing.
Actually, sorry, I'm not thinking that a better thing isn't that they're starting to add more and more, narrative components.
Yes. It is more narrative.
It is. Social. Yeah, it's better than Socializer. Yeah. But yeah, like out of the 7, core aesthetics, right? It's they're adding a little bit more world building, a little bit more, maybe a little bit. I don't know whether it falls more into narrative or more into like fantasy, but like it's a little bit more world building.
Yeah. And I just want to say this before I forget. If they do make a Mario Online, yes, they need to call it M Mario, because then you got your 2 M's and the O on the end, right?
Yeah. So like capital M, lowercase ARI,
capital O. Yeah.
At us, Nintendo. Look, you all heard it. We came up with it first.
Yes. Yeah. It is Friday, November 23rd, I think, at 8:18 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah, that's ours.
So there's one other thing I want to, and if you want to go way into this, we can, but I just need to make sure I get this complaint out of my system, because I should have brought this up in visuals, but I feel like it's more mechanical in nature. So the camera, no.
So I just got to talk more about this camera.
No, so one of the things that 3D graphics, for people who are not graphicists, they're made up of polygons, right? So lots of triangles everywhere, which means when you have a shape that is literally made of polygons, like say a pyramid, it matters where the edges of those different surfaces are. And this is a game-breaking mechanic that I came really close to breaking one of my controllers. Like, I'm not proud to admit that, but just to give you an idea of like how angry I was, like I did the full like into the ground in front of me with one of my controllers. That's
why you're Red Lantern, man.
Yeah. Not proud of it. Not saying anyone should behave that way or reward me for it, but it happened.
Yeah.
So in like one of the desert levels, there's like a star on top of the pyramid, and you have to walk around the pyramid, and each time you jump up to the next little walkway, it's slightly narrower. Mm-hmm. Well, because there are slopes in Mario 64, they introduced a little sliding animation. And the little sliding animation takes a second to exit. So like once you start sliding, you can jump to your feet, but it takes a second. And so help you God, if you allow the animation to play all the way through, it takes 1,000 years. So when you're walking up this little narrow walkway, you would think, like, if you were a real human walking on a real narrow walkway with a pit of death to your right and the safety of the pyramid on your left, you would lean against the pyramid.
You wouldn't have to, because you're Mario.
Because you're Mario. So you would like, that would be like your guiding, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're gonna trip, you want to trip into the pyramid, not into the death pit.
No, I would be hugging that pyramid so hard, it would assume that I was its best friend from college.
Yeah. So they made a slope of the pyramid. Like they specifically added the code that like, if you touch this slope, we are going to initiate the sliding mechanic because you cannot stand on this slope. The thing is, you only have to put the tiny, teeny, ditty, little bittiest edge of your boot on that slope, and it initiates the full sliding animation. And now you're on a narrow walkway. And if you do not time your little corrective jump exactly right, you go careening to your death. And we've talked about this, n number of other times where it's like, you know, let me make the enemy's first bullet always miss. Let me take an extra step off the platform. Because
always err in the favor of the player.
Yes, because it's more fun. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just more fun for the world to gently favor me.
Well, because it makes you kind of feel a little bit more heroic, just a little bit. Again, like there's no difference between a perfect illusion and, and reality. And actually, a quick tangent. I was playing Mega Man 11, and one of the things that like about the third or fourth time, I got so frustrated because like I was running against like a thing and I was super stressed and I jumped and it didn't register the jump and I just fell to my death. I was like, I was so frustrated. I went, the coyote physics are off.
Yeah.
The game's not wrong. I'm wrong. It feels wrong. The coyote physics are off.
Yes. And this is exactly the problem is when, because they have to program, here's how a wall functions, here's how the ground functions, here's how the water functions, which is another thing I could complain about. But with the slopes, they said, here is how a slope functions. And then if you have ever walked next to a sloped surface, like a steep hill or something, just imagine if you rested your hand on the hill at shoulder height and then you immediately fell to your stomach. Because that is what happens in Super Mario 64, because the initiate the slope animation code goes all the way to where the slope meets the flat surface. And it shouldn't. It should go like 75% of Mario's height or better up before that starts, so that if you try to jump onto the slope and run up the slope, the game can say, and make you slide to your death, and that's how you learn that you can't walk on slopes that steep. But to just say, if you interact with it at all, if a loose thread on your giant perfect circle fist glove touches the slope, you fall on your stomach and slide to your death, that's not fun. And it's one of those things where I want to crap on them for making that decision, but I am positive that was either unintentional or just a full-on like, well, yeah, it's a slope. Like the code for the slope goes all the way to where the slope ends.
I am confident that was unintentional.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like but it's one of those things where, because after I was done, like I didn't get anywhere close to beating this game because I rage quit at one point where I was just like, because I thought you only needed 50 stars.
Don't bury the lead.
Yeah, you only you did it earlier and I didn't even call you on it.
It's true.
I thought you only need 50 stars. You actually need 70. So I was just like, I've seen enough. I've learned all I needed to learn to do my job as a podcaster. And then I literally put the N64 controller down and I picked my Nintendo Switch Pro controller up and I booted up Super Mario Odyssey, and I won't bore you with the list, but I then probably spent the next 15 to 30 minutes showing Susan all of the things they have fixed in Mario since Super Mario 64. Because I was just like, oh, look, when I do this, this happens. Look, when I do this, this happens. Look, the camera won't let me fish it all the way through a wall because then I wouldn't be able to see what Mario's doing. Like, just all of these little things that I did that because it made me feel justified, right? I was like, Nintendo clearly agrees with me because they fixed all the things I'm complaining about.
I mean, you just needed to figure out what Nintendo does because you knew what Nintendo didn't.
It's Nintendo. Did you really just do that by accident?
What?
That was it. That was in the early 90s. That was the Genesis.
I thought it was Genesis does what Nintendo doesn't.
No, what Nintendo don't? Slap it?
Nope. But all that being said, I mean, I know like deep soul searching moment here, man. Did it hold up?
No.
No.
So here's the thing. I want to be very clear on this. Because sometimes we've been muddy about this and whatever, it's an exercise for the reader, but I want to be very clear. The game performs exactly today as it does in your memory. Mm-hmm. And so if you have those memories, I think you could go back and play this game and deal with all of the rough edges and have a perfectly serviceable experience. I don't have those memories. And that's why I feel like more than any game we've probably played so far, you must have nostalgia goggles to play Super Mario 64, because Super Mario 64, unfortunately, exists in a universe that has Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario Galaxy and even Super Mario Sunshine. Like games that are everything Super Mario 64 was laying the foundation for.
I mean, it even lives in a universe where, unfortunately, we have Luigi's Mansion,
Exactly. Right.
Like that's the universe. That's the darkest timeline that we live in. Like we've got all these great Mario games and Luigi's Mansion.
Yes. One of the worst, I think, didn't they find some correlation between fans of Luigi's Mansion and serial killers? I feel like I read that somewhere.
Oh, I'm confident that there's been several published studies on that. Like if you like Luigi's Mansion, you are 5 times more likely to be a serial killer.
Yeah. No, that seems peer reviewed.
Absolutely.
But this is my problem, is if you played Super Mario 64 when it was new or early in your games literacy, and then you worked your way up to Super Mario Odyssey, you could look back and remember it fondly. If you played Super Mario Sunshine, which I did, and you played Super Mario Galaxy, which I did, and you skipped 2 because it was way harder, and then you played Super Mario Odyssey, which I love to death, and they're all basically the same game. They're all 3D collectathon platformers with an open world where you have these little set pieces you get to explore. They're all basically the same game, but they're all increasingly refined, increasingly polished, increasingly well thought out, well developed experiences. And to go back to proto 3D Mario, which is essentially what this is, without having been there when he evolved, nostalgia goggles required.
Yeah, I would say that, like, because normally when I'm talking about this, like, who would I recommend this game to? And the only 2 people are people who have nostalgia for it, which is decidedly nostalgia goggles. Or, like, if you want to watch the fish learn how to walk, like, I really think that this is a good experience in that. Like, if you haven't played it, but you're like, I want to see where it all kind of came from, a lot of times people would go back to like Super Mario Brothers, and say like, yes, this is where it all came from. It's like, yeah, kinda.
This is where Super Mario World all came from, right? All the 2D Super Marios were leading up to Super Mario World.
Yes. And that is the, like technological, like adroit society that is traveling the stars. That's the what is it, tier 3 civilization.
Yes.
Like that's Super Mario World. And then they said like, what if rebirth, and then it was born again, like, and now we're watching like the bacteria like slowly, become symbiotic with the mitochondria and like create the first cell, it's not perfect. It's not even semi-perfect, but it is a cell, right? So, I mean, that's the thing, is that honestly, if you wanted to see that happen, I would say absolutely play it. If you have personal nostalgia goggles for this, absolutely play it. But if you don't have all of that, you're just kind of be like, Mario, no.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.